Hello everybody, it's me the Boss Hog, and today I'm going to walk through my wealth as of the end of May 2021. Last month was the start of May just because I was very poor at my timing and there was a few issues with the timings, and I subsequently discovered some errors in my data, so hopefully now everything's been corrected and I have a checkpoint in place as well. So yeah, my wealth as of the end of May comes to 257,000, so now it feels very genuine that I'm a quarter of a millionaire. Woo! And we're going to walk through exactly what that consists of. Let's do it. Okay, so to start, you can kind of see a drop here from 258 to 256.5, technically rounded up to 257, but this was expected. It's kind of what I touched on in my previous one, where we had all of the income but none of the expenses. This is a much fairer reflection of that. You can see as well it's much more realistically ahead of projection, whereas April was kind of pretty unrealistic as a result of that. So as I was touching on in April, everything was super heavily caveated, whereas now it feels very genuine. Costs and income has lined up again. We continue to run about £2,000 or about 1% ahead of projections, so that feels really good. And yeah, not much more to add beyond that. So let's have a look at this breakdown. Alright, so I suspect, like most people, majority of our wealth is in our home equity. We have a two-bed flat in London, and you'll see in a second it's about 30% paid off now, so that's pretty awesome. There was modest movement in both of our pensions, but actually our May pensions didn't really see a ton of movement, especially considering that both of those have the capital injection as well, so actually decreased compared to what they were at last month when it had a particularly strong month. Our ISAs, however, are doing super well, both in terms of a performance perspective and new capital. If anyone wants to have a look at those portfolio review, I've just done that for the end of May as well. Walk you through that. Aurelia, that's our daughter. She has her own little ISA as well. At the moment it's familial wealth. When she takes it away at sort of 18, it becomes hers, but for now we're including it. We're adding £100 a month into that. So she's 16 months old, so basically you can tell there that it's a £112 profit. Fine. We've also still got some shares outside of our ISAs. I have gradually been moving those things over. Now we actually only have one holding of the 1632 there, so that's great. You can see here our other is minus. That is A minus. There's a liability here that comes due in 2023, so we don't have to immediately have the money available, but it's there anyway. And also I agreed with my wife that she could have some seed capital for a side hustle, so she took advantage of that, and also she started going back to the office following maternity leave and COVID, so there was also a fairly significant expense for clothing, etc. So all of that contributed as well, but still, oh, and also the last thing to add was that we added quite a lot of capital in May into our ISAs, more than I'd originally planned. That was partly to take advantage of some wobbles in the middle of May in the stock markets, so hence why that as well, basically. So some of these investments and costs are running ahead of themselves and or will be reinvested, hopefully to bring in some money at a later date, but for now we're just sitting on a kind of paper debt here that we could cobble together this money if that liability was needed sooner than it's expected. So that's how our wealth breaks down. So this one was proper exciting for me to now own 30% in our equity, equity in our home. What more can I say? It's super cool. We got this mortgage just before I turned 30, which I think is awesome. I never really dreamt about having my own place before 30, and now we have 30% of it, so that's super awesome. Interestingly, I did have a chat with our mortgage provider, which is Santander, and we could have an equity release of about 45,000 if we wanted it. I was kind of inquiring because considering going into business with a friend, and also just to kind of see what our options were in terms of, whether we could invest in stocks or etc. So I don't want to use that just yet for anything frivolously, but it's good to know that that option is there and we could equity release 45k if we wanted to. But yeah, home value is increasing in line with our postcode basically, so nothing spectacular, but also, I mean, this is like 600 quid a month, so also nothing to joke about either. And interestingly, our mortgage payments go down about £1 every month, and instead that goes toward our capital repayment, so that's also quite awesome to see as well. So our mortgage is about £1,300 a month, of which about £800 is capital and 500 is interest. So still a long time until this is paid off, but moving in the right direction. So it feels really good on this part of it for sure. Okay, so if home equity was the exciting bit, private pensions is probably the least exciting bit. Nutmeg, which is my historic consolidated pensions, more or less unchanged, gained sort of 60 quid during the month. Not great. There was a £500 increase in Standard Life, which is my current and my favourite actually, portal, etc. But considering that I added sort of £730 to it, technically that went backwards. And very similar situation to my wife as well. You know, that got added about £400 into, and went up 300. So also went backwards. Yeah, I think you know, insurance companies, even after I've made some changes to the funds, just not a great, not as good at least as what I've been able to do in my stocks. So that's a bit disappointing. But still, it is what it is, right? This stuff's a long game, and we can't even access this stuff for sort of 25 years. So try not to overthink it. Just a bit of a disappointing performance. I would say the previous month it had been solid at least, but yeah, not fantastic this month. But it is what it is. Okay, so let's move on to shares. So the top three, so for the ISAs for Liam, me, and my wife Eva, these are managed by myself, as are the non-ISA shares. So an ISA is just a UK tax advantaged account. They're managed by me. It's something I really enjoy doing. I've got other videos if anyone wants to check those out, especially portfolio reviews, tries to give a consolidated overview of everything that I have. The shares for our daughter Aurelia, they're held and managed by a company called Nutmeg, also who we just touched on as well in my consolidated pensions. So our shares, as well as increases in capital here, you can see a really big jump of about 8,000. Of that 8,000, about 2,000 is profit. That's what we made last month. To see that, just look at portfolio video. The 6,000 is capital injections. Now the plan is to sort of that's much more than the long-term plan in terms of capital injections, but I put an extra couple of thousand in following a dip in the stock market, so which I think was the fine thing to do. But yeah, so that was part of the reason here for the big jump. But pleased with how this is looking. Basically, I'm outperforming the markets over the last few months, destroying the FTSE with my UK holdings, and basically fixing mistakes with my US ones. So this is all moving in the right direction, and honestly, I'm pretty happy. This is the most exciting part, actually, of the wealth from my perspective. Okay, so yeah, so our joint bank account here got a little bit beaten up. My wife didn't actually contribute anything last month to our joint bank account, but again, this was expected in terms of some seed capital for her side hustle, plus some spending on shopping. I say shopping, you know, work clothes, pretty important stuff. And I'm also going to have to do a similar shop in the not too distant future as well. So that's quite a big drop actually in our joint bank account there. Also as well, I think the timing kind of is part of this as well. Like April there being 39, that was after I'd made a payment from my salary basically, whereas May, this is before either of us have been paid. So this is again a fairly material drop as a result of that, so to be expected. The rest here is relatively not too much, to be honest with you. Again, this liability here is building at 49 at the moment, but we're fine with this. As I touched on previously, we do have a shortfall of about 16,000 at the moment. I sort of think that this should stabilize around that level for the next couple of months for a few reasons. Again, I need sort of some new clothes, and also as well as my wife's side hustle. I actually side hustle poker, so I'd like sort of £3,000 to £5,000 poker pot to get that back up and running again, which is what I previously used to have. I do play poker profitably. The last full year I was playing, I made about 12 grand. So I'd like to do something similar if timing allows me to do so, and then that will just become additional income effectively to this. So that's the plan. But again, that's going to happen over the next couple of months and keep this relatively depressed. Worst case scenario, if we did have a call on this liability here, which I'm not expecting, but just in case, we have the means to kind of either take it out against our home in terms of equity release, or sell off some of our shares depending on what the market was like, and etc. So we have options here to be flexible, but at the moment running it quite hot, to be perfectly fair. Alright, so just to summarise, as I touched on at the start of this video, I did notice a couple of mistakes from my Feb to April summaries. This was mainly just where equations hadn't quite dragged down and things weren't auto-populating, etc. I spent a little bit of time, seeing as I am an analyst by profession, fixing that, and introduced a check as well, which is what the bottom bit on here is showing. And you can see here the variance. So starting this in February, then running about 2.3k ahead in March. April shot up for the reasons that we've discussed in terms of all the income already landing, but none of the expenses. And then May, at the end of May here, really, which is what we're going through now. It is a much more realistic point of time of our wealth, and you can see like there's been a slight improvement since March, and again that's really what I'm comparing it to. I'm almost ignoring the April numbers just because they don't seem particularly fair. So currently running about 3,000 ahead of plans, and the current plan is to have 295,000 by the end of December. So yeah, everything now matches. Apologies for any mistakes. I don't really enjoy making mistakes in my numbers, but it is what it is. I seem to be saying that a lot, and we'll try and do this now. There's the fixed point at the end of the month. This should be much more accurate and easy to measure moving forward, which is the plan. So yeah, so that's where we currently are. If they've got any questions, feel free to ask. But yeah, so this is a pretty important month just because it's a nice round number, I suppose, being above 250. I'm really feeling it as well. So yeah, current wealth as of the end of May. Thank you very much, everybody. I've been the Boss Hog, and good luck, I suppose, with your wealth build.